So welcome everybody. This is Jonathan Bodway in the Fredericton office of QPS in Canada. We're doing the Qimera 1.5 webinar today, so I'll just do a quick sound check with Duncan. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. And the screen's coming through for you?
Yes, looking good.
All right, cool. And you're recording?
Yep.
Okay, so as usual, we'll dive in. We'll make the recording available after the fact on YouTube. Duncan's helping us out. He's still working with QPS at 25% time while he explores automated mapping solutions with his new company, 40 Ocean. So this is one of the things that Duncan and I like to do together is the webinars. So we'll do the usual format where we'll go light on slides. We'll do some live demos. Myself and Duncan will be handling this. Duncan's going to be organizing in the scenes, behind the scenes in the UK, and we'll take any questions. And he'll interrupt me once in a while, or we'll take natural breaks to answer a few of them. We can't answer all of them, obviously, but he'll curate them. There's a few handouts that are available on the GoToWebinar link for you. There's the release notes for 1.5, and then plus a couple of PowerPoints that turn into PDF that walk you through some of the finer points of the workflows on how to use some of the new capability. They're not exhaustive, and we'll probably be doing a follow-up webinar in maybe a month's time to explore some of the other points. As always, you can go to qps.nl, our website, and you click on Qimera in the downloads or evaluate section and get a trial version, read the release notes, etc. So the highlights in this webinar, what we'll be touching on is these first four items: Qimera Live improvements, cooperative cleaning, production line processing, and new laser support from Quincy. In parentheses below that is little small pieces of functionality that I'll weave into the above demos. And we'll be focusing on them. And just quickly, there are other things that are in the release that we're not going to touch on in this webinar. There's just not enough time. You can plot the SVP locations in the scene. You can see that in this picture here. These little telegraph poles are the SVP locations and how deep they are. There's new support for R2Sonic multispectral format, plus their raw binary format. If you log R2Sonic data right off the wire from the sonar in a binary file, you can bring that into Qimera now. We have a number of clients that do that and have requested that. You can add a new layer into an existing sounding grid file. This is something that's very useful for Quincy users. That was a capability in cloud. During export of tracks, you can choose the projection system if you want to change that to be geographic or projected units. You can do that now. The request of a lot of cloud users in our cloud workshops, there's now a workspace preset for just point cleaning, which really cleans up the display and removes a lot of the unnecessary widgets that really aren't pertinent to the job of just cleaning points and reviewing data. And we made some performance improvements for the slice editor, which speed things up. Also, that was something we found with the cloud to Qimera transition workshops we've been doing. Another slide here showing a few other capabilities. There's a coverage extinction plot tool. This is useful if you're commissioning sonars. Before you sign the bottom line to accept the system for delivery, you want to know that the sonar performs to specification. And that's what this plot does, is if you drive the sonar down a slope, you can measure the portmost and starboardmost soundings and get a coverage extinction envelope to see just how deep you can use your sonar and at what kind of swath widths you can get. And this is useful to compare to the manufacturer's specification to ensure the integration is correct and that the sonar is functioning well. There's a bit more control on how patch test offsets are applied. This is working with Kongsberg. They have very specific needs because of the bistatic nature of their sonars. Some of their shallow water systems where the transmitter and the receiver are separate modules. And they have specific requirements on how the patch test offsets are applied. You can apply the transducer tracks in the over window when you're running the patch test now. Before that was the COG. Now the track that's drawn is exactly where the transducer was, so you can more carefully pick what's the nadir track and make a better decision there. There's a few other niceties here. I won't get into them all, but we'll get straight to the demos. So let's get started. So we'll start with Qimera Live. This is just a slide showing off what we've got now. So what's new in Qimera Live? This lets you bring in data working against a live acquisition system, and you can have your map and project building up in front of you. What we've done is added this bottom stuff. Duncan, can you see my mouse moving around?
Yes.
Okay. This bottom bit, now you can specify what kind of file to look for and then the coordinate reference frame that's coming in. and you can start with a brand new empty project now. And this was used live at the Ocean Business Kongsberg booth, where they had the ASV Seaworker 5 out running with, I believe, an EM2040P. They had that running in the whole show, and at their booth they had Qimera Live running, and you can see that up here, where this was out running around and collecting data, and every time a new file became available, it would be imported automatically and added to the map. So that ran successfully for several days straight. So what I'll do is just a quick demo of this, like we did last time. I've got an assistant in the other room, James. He's one of our developers. He is going to set up transfer data into my Dropbox folder here. And what I'm going to do is set up Qimera now. So you can, before you needed to have a little bit of data to get it going, now you can basically bootstrap it completely empty. So I'll start a new project and click OK. And I just ignore the usual prompts to add data, and I click the Qimera Live button. And this brings up the new dialog, the same dialog that's been before, and now I just select, I want to bring in .all files. I believe they'll be coming in WGS84. And I click OK. And it says, when that comes in, you'll want to make a map, of course. And I say yes. I'm going to pick my resolution. And I'd like to do cube on the fly. So what I'll do is choose the NOAA 50 centimeter cube settings. And I click OK. And then I click OK. And then now James should start putting data into that folder here. So we'll see items show up. So he's off in another room in the building. And this is the interesting part where we see if his, well, okay, here comes a file. I get the Dropbox notification. Within about 15 or 20 seconds, this should just appear in here. So again, this is a blank, empty slate project, and I basically, with a couple of clicks, configured it to be expecting .all files to show up and to get added to a grid. They'll be processed with the ray trace and everything, and then cube will be applied. And here we've got the first file landing in. And if I click on the dynamic surface, I can see that the cube layer is being shown. It's also computing an average grid. And there's cube. And then we'll get a couple more files in here. There's line number 5 and 6. And they're just getting added immediately there. So there, that's the big difference with Qimera Live this time around, is that you can start it up completely blank, fresh slate. And with a couple of clicks, you're up and running. And the only thing you really need to specify, if we go back to this slide, is what the file format is. Why didn't that start? There we go. You specify the file format coming in, and if you need to change the projection information for what's coming in, you can do that there. For example, if you bring in HiPAC, those are projected units, so you need to make sure you chose the right coordinate frame there. So that's running. We probably have most of that data in now. There's 4 lines. I think there's 6 in total. So we'll just leave that running in the background. There's just 6 lines coming in. So let's jump to the next section, the webinar, which is Cooperative Cleaning. So we did a quick video of that, and that's been available on YouTube for, I guess, nearly a month now, which showed a quick demo. So we're basically going to take that same demo and do it live in this webinar, and we'll just get into a little bit more detail. The basic idea is you've got raw data on the left here. You bring that into a project, and you can immediately create cleaning projects. And those basically copy a subset of the data into other projects that other people can then review. And they're either killing dots and validating data. They might be marking up soundings as features or plotted or suspect. Meanwhile, the master processor is doing the mathematical processing. And at the end, at any point, you can fold back the work of all these individual data reviewers into the main project and have the benefit of being able to split the work up. This has a couple of nice advantages. That you can fan the work out amongst a few people. The people that are doing the data validation only need Qimera Clean, and that's a significantly lower price than the Qimera Pro, where you need to do the mathematical processing. Because they're running Qimera Clean, they have less training, so they're lower cost personnel. They can be. And because it's running Qimera Clean, you don't have access to the full mathematical processing. So you're really limiting your cost and your risk. They can't really accidentally misapply a patch test. All they can do is review data, mark soundings as invalid, and mark things up. And at the end, the chief surveyor has the ability to override any of their decisions. So here's a couple of words in here on how that's done. I think that largely captures what I just said. What I'll do is get right to a demo on that. And we'll shut down that. We don't need Qimera Live running anymore. So let's bring this up. Oopsie, I think I accidentally started it again. Okay, so there's the project that James has been feeding into, and that's all done. There's that rec cube surface with 6 lines. Let's tear that down. And actually for this part, I'm going to run Quincy first, because this is a Quincy project that was collected. And I want to show off just a little bit of new capability in Quincy. I've got this project loaded up in Quincy, so you can see there's maybe 20 survey lines in there. What you can do now in Quincy in the latest version, 8.16, is you can launch your Quincy project. When you go offline, you can click this new button and launch it into Qimera. So that will start Qimera, and it'll prompt you right away. Do you want to bring this in just for point cleaning, which is what you would have done with cloud? So we'll say yes, or you can bring it for full sonar processing, which lets you do things like ray trace or apply navigation. So it brings in your QPDs and the dynamic surface. These are all built online. And so there's no more processing to do. That's all loaded up. All the calculations that were done online are preserved. So that's a really, really quick import. What we'll do is, under the project menu, there's a new option to create cleaning project. And I'll say my cleaning project. So this is the first stage. I make a bunch of cleaning projects, and I want to tile the area up. I'll make 3 rows and 3 columns. Click OK. And what this does is it goes through the entire project. You'll see this in the job activity window. It's extracting a region of the dynamic surface, one for each of the tiles. It only does ones for where there's data. And it makes a small set of graphical objects that let you keep track of what the carved out areas are. So what I'll do is make a group here and say not cleaned. And I can put these graphical objects in here, and what I'll do is I'll color code them red to remind me that I've sent these off to people to review. If I turn these off, I'll just see one. Oopsie. I can see one there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give one of those projects to James, who's in the other room. So what I'll do is jump to Windows Explorer, go to my projects. I'm going to give him project number 3. Copy this into Dropbox, and all right, that's off there. So he'll get a notification on his desktop when that's uploaded. In the meantime, what I'll do is open my own cleaning project here. So I'll minimize this version of instance of Qimera and run it a second time. And I'll open cleaning project number 5, for example. Oh, I put it in the wrong directory. Thank you, James. James told me I put it in the wrong directory. It needs to go in there. Okay. Okay, so I've got my cleaning project here. What I can do then is move the GoToMeeting. Tip it into 3D and we'll have a look. And you can see there's a bunch of spikes here. So we covered this in the YouTube video demonstrating this capability. What I can do is look at the checkout area is this square that's drawn. I can use this as a selection. If I right click, this is a new capability. Use a selection. So this switches you into spatial selection mode, and I can now do something like run a strong spline to the surfaces files in that selection, and click go. And this will clean the spikes out. And that did. What I can do now also in this cleaning project is I can go and review some of the points. And I'll just run the slice editor here real quick. So there's a remaining bump on the seafloor that maybe I know what that is or maybe I don't. There's a new keyboard shortcut in the slice editor. You can turn the rejected soundings on and off with Control-R. So the ones that are rejected are in light gray. Those were rejected by blocking filters. What I can do here is switch to select and edit. If I look at these dots, they're from one pass, and there's lots of other colored dots from other passes. That's a little suspicious to me. What I'll do is select these and mark them. I'll set the suspect flagged and save that. That saves it in the file. I believe those soundings are suspect. And what I'll do is hunt around. Is there anything else of note here? There's a little bump here. And that looks like a lot of different soundings from different passes. I'll make the points extra large. You can see lots of different colors there. I'm going to select all of these. I think that's a feature of note that the master surveyor should know about. So I'll set the feature flag. And again, I'm in select and edit mode. Normal edit mode lets you just kill dots. Select and edit lets you select things and then decide what to do with the right-click menu. I hit save. So I'm done with this, and what I'll do is a silly example to show how you can recover from mistakes. I'll just draw a polygon, and what I'll do is I'll switch back to normal edit mode, and I'll pretend to accidentally kill all those soundings. And I've just put a big hole in the terrain model here from the cleaning project. So I'm done in my cleaning project. I'll close this, and I come back to the main instance of Qimera, which I have here. And what I can do now is apply cleaning project edits. What I do is navigate to the project that I want to import. I just point to the project directory. I'm not selecting the files in there. I just point to the project directory. So cleaning projects number 5 is what I was working on. And then this will come in. You'll see a little update here. And the grid updates. And we see a hole. Oopsie, what happened there? So what I can do is cleaning projects number 5. That's what I've been told is the chief surveyor to go look at. So I can right-click and zoom to bounds, and that brings me to that area. So I can see that that person obviously made a mistake there. I can recover that if I come back here. And I can use the filter toolbar to accept all soundings, or what I can do is revert all manual edits. Looks like that person over-edited by accident to the surfaces file inside the selection. I click go, and that should bring that back to life. And what I can also do is click on the dynamic surface and go down to the color by combo box, color by feature flag, and I can see that that person is highlighted in an area where they think there's a feature. I can select that, run the slice editor, and in select and edit mode, I can right-click and say select by feature flag, and I can see that, yes, okay, I believe that's a feature. I agree. I confirm that. That's true. What I can do now is if that person told me that they had some stuff that was suspicious, I can color by the suspect flag, and I come over here and I say, okay, let's have a look at this. You think that's suspicious? Let's see if I agree. And again, I'm in select and edit mode. I right-click, select by suspect flag, and I agree, that's suspicious. If I make my dots nice and big here, I can see that only one pass of the multibeam picked that up, but none of the others did. So that's likely an artifact. What I can do is switch to normal edit mode and kill all of those soundings. That's going to make a hole in the terrain model, but that's okay. We've now identified a holiday where we need to go back and get another pass. And so I've seen a bunch of updates from James in the Dropbox notifications. I'm assuming he's somewhere near complete. Maybe he can knock on my door if he's ready to have his stuff go. I'm ready to get it. And I think I gave him cleaning project number 3. In the meantime, what I'll do is create a group here. Clean. Okay, he knocked at my door. He's ready to go. I'm going to move the polygon for cleaning project number 5 to here. That lets me keep track that I've reviewed that and I accept the edits. And I've made a couple of modifications. And I color code it green. And I'm done with that. James had project number 3, sorry, let's turn that on. I'll zoom in there. What I'll do is I'll get out of the slice editor mode, and then I will apply James's cleaning project edits. So I go back to Dropbox, Qimera Live. There's his project that I gave him through Dropbox. So that went through the internet off to a server and then down to his computer. And he's done cleaning remotely with his own version of the QPDs. And this is updating my surface now with his edits. And I can see that he made a big happy face. If I go to the dynamic surface, did he mark anything suspect? I don't notice anything. Did he mark any features? That's colored by feature flag. Oh, he did. He pointed out there's a bunch of sand that's gotten onto these footings here that we might be of interest in having a look at the next day. So that's just a quick example of how I can have someone else work on data, completely remote location, and what I can do is recover from his little goofiness here, refer all manual edits inside that selection. No, that's not what I wanted. Revert, accept all soundings, I think that was what I wanted in there. And I've recovered from that. Meanwhile, he's cleaned the area and he's marked up a few areas for me to look at. And that's largely cooperative cleaning in a nutshell. I can do other things. If I wanted to in this main project, I could have done re-SBP. I could have applied SBETs. I could have done other kinds of things. Meanwhile, other people are cleaning the data, reviewing it, and marking up the soundings. So it's a quick way to get through a big job and spread the work around. So that's the end of that. Duncan, are there any questions about that?
There aren't any questions about that at the moment. No, all seem pretty clear.
Okay, cool. Let's switch to the next round, which is production line processing. So this is another multi-user workflow, and if I just walk through this diagram quickly, it lets you deal with pulses of data coming in, for example, over several days, where you've got a surveyor out collecting data, so the day one data is brought into a Qimera project, and they're doing the mathematical processing. Maybe they're doing the SVP work, they're maybe applying an SBET, and maybe they're just doing a quick data validation exercise, because they have to get out on the boat the next day and do it all over again. Meanwhile, in the office, there's somebody who's responsible for collating all of the data into the deliverable product, making sure that the individual surveyors are doing their job each day, and that we're repeatedly doing the same methods day to day to day. So checking the junction analysis and things like that to make sure things are working out nicely. The nice thing about this particular workflow is that in this secondary project where you're collecting all the results, it maintains a live link back to the QPDs, so that if you find a problem, you can instruct the surveyor to open, for example, the day 2 data project and make a correction because maybe they forgot to apply the tide or something like that. Their processing project will update, which updates the QPDs, which then updates in here as well. And these aren't meant to be done at the same time. You only open these processing projects if you need to. The idea is that the surveyor got it mostly right, and the data reviewer verifies that, and they only get the processing project reopened if they need to. So there's a couple of notes on this. We'll make these slides available after the fact. So it allows you to break up the processing and cleaning tasks. It's good for daily pulses of data. The mathematical processing is focused in one area, and then the process sounding output is aggregated into a master delivery project. And like I said, there's a link maintained. And when you're all done with the master delivery project, you can encapsulate all of the linked QPDs into the main project for delivery, as well as the grids and any other deliverables. So let's get to a quick demo of that. What I'll do is, I think I've got Qimera running over here. What I'll do is make a new project. I'll call this day 1. So let's pretend that I'm the surveyor after 1 day of work, and I'm adding my data files. And I've got these 3.all files. This is from the Shallow Survey 2015 data set. And they're going to come in and they'll convert to QPD. And so let's just let that run. Meanwhile, I'll pretend I'm the second surveyor for day 2. And I'll make a second project, call it day 2. Click OK. And I'm prompted to add raw sonar files. I'm going to do that. I add my files. And I want day number 2. Here they are. And let's bring them in. So while that's cooking up and converting, let's go back to the first day's project here. It's prompting me to make a map. I say, yes, let's make a map. 50 centimeters suggested. That happens to be the deliverable that we need. So we'll let that cook up, and I'll bop back to the second day, which is over here, which is still converting some of the .all files into QPDs. That's nearly complete. Here's the map from the first project, and everything looks okay at a quick first glance. There's no tide applied, but I don't see any major artifacts to clean up. I see there's a small step here between these survey lines. I can profile across there and get an idea of the step size. So again, I'm pretending I'm the first day surveyor. I know we're doing GPS hiding, so I can click on those files, click on the processing settings, and go to vertical referencing, and we'll switch to GPS hiding mode, and I click OK. And it prompts me to reprocess, and I say yes, and you'll note that all the files are marked as needing reprocessing. I say yes. I'll let that go. So again, I'm the first day surveyor. I'm reviewing my data. I came off the boat. The map looks okay. I'm switching to GPS hiding, and let's see if these little edge effects go away. Okay, they're better. They're not perfect, but they're better. And I'm pretty happy with the data set. So as the first day surveyor, I'm happy with this. I'm ready to tell my boss, or the person who's collecting all this data, the day one is ready to go. I can close my project. Meanwhile, let's go back to day two. I'll select these guys. I'll make a dynamic surface, 50 centimeters. Let's let that cook up. So let's put myself in the shoes of the person who's collecting all of this data from all of the surveyors in the field. And I'll make a new project. I'll call this Final Delivery Project. So in this mode, I ignore the usual prompts. I say, no thank you. I need to go to a new spot. Under the source menu, there's a new item, Add QPD Files from Project. This lets you point at a project. So I'm in my projects directory. I go to day one. That's what the day one surveyor told me that's where it is. I point to that project and I say find QPDs in there and bring them in. And that makes this project aware of those QPDs. It's not copying them into this project. It's simply making the project aware of these remote resources. And what I can do is pop back to the second day survey. That's all done. So I'm bouncing around, I realize. In the final delivery project, it's sitting there waiting to get the data from day two. So let's go back into the shoes of the day two surveyor. The day two surveyor is maybe a different person, and they give a quick cursory review. The data looks okay. There's some small artifacts between the survey lines due to hiding. We don't have a tide applied, but we're doing GPS hiding. So again, I select the lines, I go to the processing settings, I click vertical referencing, I switch to GPS mode, and my boss told me to apply a geoid separation of 50.123, and I type that in, and I click OK, and it prompts me to reprocess, and so it reprocesses these files, and the map will update, and hopefully these seams get a little bit better, these small artifacts between the survey lines. And the grid updates. And of course the color map changes because we've changed the vertical scale. And sure enough, the seams get better. Okay, the GPS hiding did a good job correcting, and I zoom out and I look around, and oh, I notice an artifact here. That's probably the end of the line where the last few pings didn't have a GPS height. So what I can do is just grab that area, and I'll launch the slice editor. And I can see the majority of my soundings up here. Let's just make the dots a little bit smaller. I see all the dots up there, and there's the few pings down there that didn't get a proper GPS height. So I don't care about a few pings. I'll just get rid of them. I hit save. And you'll notice that the map updates there. And I think that's it. Oh, and the boss told me that we need to pay attention to recs. So what I'll do is I found a rec there. And I'll switch back to select and edit mode in the slice editor. And I'm going to select, switch to selection mode. I'm going to grab all of these soundings and right click, and I'm going to set the feature flag. Hit save, and I can verify that worked. If I color by feature flag, I can see that I've basically made those soundings as a feature. They show up in the map. And there's another one over here. I think this looks like a rec, and I'll just do the same trick where I mark that up and right click and set feature flag. Hit save. Okay, and then I do a quick scan through and I don't see anything else that looks like a wreck. So from the day 2 surveyor's point of view, I'm done. So we'll get out of the slice editor, we'll close this project. And as the day 2 surveyor, I go to the boss and say, listen, I'm done day 2, you can add it to the master project. So again, I'm switching my hats. I'm now the master surveyor. I'm going to go to the source menu and add QPD files from project, and the surveyor told me that day 2 is ready to go. I point at day 2 and I select that folder, and it brings in those QPDs. I say, okay, cool, I've got everybody's data. Let's select all those files. I'm going to make the master deliverable project here. Call it final grid. Click OK. This is going to create a dynamic surface. You'll see down in the job activity window, work is underway. So this will just take 30 seconds or so, maybe not that long. And I'll have my first look at day 1 and day 2 all in the same map. Meanwhile, the surveys are out on the boat getting another day of data. And as the chief surveyor, I look at this and say, oh boy, what happened here? This is not good. I just right click and drag a quick profile across. And I can see here in the profile view that I'm getting 40 meters above datum and minus 10 below. It looks like somebody forgot to apply the datum offset. I click on one of these lines that are floating up in the air. These are the ones that are above datum. I see it's day 1. So I can tell the day 1 person, hey, I think you made a mistake. You forgot to do something. And I also notice that there's this big nasty artifact here. So I'm going to circle this and say, okay, they need to have a look at this. Load this in the slice editor. This is very suspicious to me. What I'll do is switch to select and edit mode. And I'm going to select everything in here. I'll right click and set the suspect flag. I want that surveyor to go have a look at that. I don't really believe that's true. Save the edits. That updates my personal copy of the grid here. I can color my grid by suspect flag. And I can see that's indeed marked as suspect. I can do a quick check. Feature flag. I asked people to look for wrecks. Did people find wrecks? Oh yes, okay, the day 2 surveyor did find some wrecks. There's one, and there's one. Okay, so as the person who's collecting all the data in the project, I found a few problems. And now I just walk down the hallway, I tell that person, can you open up your day 1 project and double check your vertical referencing? So let's do that. I'm now the day 1 surveyor, and let's scroll down. Day number 1's here. And okay, so now what do I do? Well, I look at my dynamic surface, and you can see there's a little out-of-date icon here. That means my QPDs have been updated. That means my dynamic surface is out of date. And my boss told me that they marked up some stuff for me to look at. They said they marked the suspect flag. That's not reflected in here because the surface hasn't updated. So this is my personal copy. This is my working surface. There's a new capability here, update dynamic surface from edits. That basically refreshes the dynamic surface just for the QPDs that have been modified since the dynamic surface was created. And sure enough, I see here, my boss wants me to look at this. And he told me it probably has to do with the GPS problems at the end of the survey line. So I'll launch the slice editor, and I see, oh yeah, I understand what you're saying. Okay, I'll look for that from now on. Sorry about that. And let's just get rid of those. Hit save. And then that updates the surface. And what I'll also do is select and edit. I'm going to select everything and clear the suspect flag. That way my boss knows that I've looked at it and reviewed it. I right click and I clear the suspect flag. And I hit save. And that'll update the grid. So this big yellow spot will go away in my grid, but really the QPDs are being updated as well. Now that my boss told me what to look for, I see the exact same problem over here. I go over to this area and say, oh yeah, there's another one of those things. So I switch back to normal edit, and let's get rid of those few bad pings that don't have a GPS height. Hit save. Okay, so I've done a better job. I've learned a few things on how not to make those mistakes. So let's go to the slice editor, and then finally my boss told me that I did my vertical referencing wrong. So I select my files, I go to the processing settings editor. I did the correct thing by switching to GPS hiding, but I forgot to apply the geoid ellipsoid separation here. So I'm going to do that. click OK. That's going to update. So my QPDs and the processing project are now updating. Now my surface will update, and I'll just do a quick profile just to make sure I did a good job. Okay, that looks good. So I can tell the boss that I did the right thing. I close my project and tell him, okay, you can reopen the master project now, and you should see that your dynamic surface wants to be updated. So I'm now the chief surveyor collecting all the data. Sure enough, the final grid's here, and you can see the out-of-date icon. It needs to be refreshed. So I right-click, actually, and let's switch back to coloring by height, and we can see the big crazy mismatch between the 2 days of surveying. So if I right-click and update dynamic surface from edits, here we go. Again, this is looking at the QPDs that still live inside the processing project. So they're a remote resource at this point. My grid is updating from that. And we can see that I didn't do much of a better job at all. Something happened that didn't quite get the job done. So I have to send them back to the drawing board. Was it the day 1 project? Was it the day 2? Oops, and I'm supposed to close that. So again, day 1 surveyor goes back in. Says he told me to check again. Vertical referencing. Oh, I put a minus. Oops. Let's update that again. So the first day surveyor, there's a fat finger typo. Things are being reprocessed. The grid should update. There it goes. Now let's double check. This stuff's supposed to be underwater. I draw a profile and I see negative numbers. Okay, yes. Sorry about that. My bad. Close the processing project. I go down the hallway again and I tell the chief surveyor, okay, day 1's finally okay. I think I got it finally fixed. And I'm now the chief surveyor. I roll my eyes a little bit and I say, let's see about that. My final grid needs to be updated again. Update from edits, and it only updates the areas for which the QPDs that are newer are affected. So if you have a large area, it's not updating the entire grid, just the area that needs to be updated. And there we go, that's updating. Oh, and then finally we've got a decent looking surface, and that's good. And I see that they've removed all those funny artifacts that I had highlighted for them. And I'm happy with that. So that's pretty much it. And then the last thing you would do is if you wanted to deliver this under the project menu, there's Encapsulate project. And what that will do, will copy those external QPDs into this one master project. And you would do this at the very end where you're sure you don't have to go back and forth anymore. So what I'll do is just click no to that. We don't need to do that right now. And that is production line processing. So Duncan, any questions about that?
Yes, one question. Does the target project update in real time when opened, or does it need to be closed for the QPDs to update and the dynamic surface reprocess icon to appear?
You can leave it open. There's a heartbeat check that checks this every once in a while, and this icon will update. But because you're sharing a resource, we built a basic multi-user workflow with the idea that you shouldn't be sharing those resources at the same time. If you need to do reprocessing on some files, open that reprocessing project. Do that stuff. If you're careful and you stay out of each other's way, I use the analogy of putting up a fence in the backyard. A lot of people can be swinging hammers. You need to make sure that you're not hitting the same nail at the same time. So I could be off cleaning in an entirely different area and scrubbing and scrubbing. Meanwhile, somebody else is reprocessing some QPDs. My dynamic surface will eventually get the sense that it's out of date. So I can pause what I'm doing and decide to update when I want to. It's not forcing you to update.
Okay, and one which isn't necessarily this related, but is the vessel configuration automatically taking the offsets recorded in the .all file from sys?
It is, yes. If I open up the day 1 project, for example, So here's the .all file. All of those, if I go to the vessel editor under the tools menu, this is something that Qimera does, which is pretty innovative, is it pulls all of the goodies out of the .all file in any file that has this kind of information. So for the EM2040, it's a dual head. You see the pitch, the roll, the heading offsets, the lever arm locations, and you see that for the entire sensor suite that's in the .all. For example, motion sensor 1 has a negative 0.05 roll offset, 0.1 pitch. Those are all extracted, and anytime you do any processing, they're used in the correct way. Anything else?
Yeah, if you encapsulate a project at the end, does it bring over the raw sonar files as well?
It does not. That's an interesting idea, though. I'm going to jot that down. Well, actually, this will be recorded, so we'll capture that after. All it does is it brings the QPDs in at the moment. If you actually, I take that back. If you're in a processing project and you're pointing to .all files that are remote, let's say on the network, and you encapsulate there, those external resources will be brought in to the processing project. If I have this production line processing final delivery project, the external resources it's aware of are QPDs that live outside of its project structure. So there's a double linkage there that we could leverage to do a recursive encapsulation, but that's not in place yet. All right, well, we're getting close to the end of our hour here, and I got one more chunk of functionality to get through, so we'll see if we have a bit of time for some more questions at the end. So what we'll do now is jump to laser mode. So we've got lasers in this demo set. It's a UAV system that was flown in Shanghai earlier this year by one of our staff members in the Netherlands office. They were using Quincy and a Planix pause pack. It was a Velodyne system, and using a Planix APX-15 UAV integrated motion sensor inertial system for navigation. There's a nice video of this on YouTube with the Quincy 3D display that you can find. So we'll make this link available as a handout after the fact. People want to go find this. It's at 1 minute and 16 in the video. So Qimera now supports laser systems from Quincy. And so what I'll do is I'll go to Quincy and I'll switch to the laser project. And again, the new 816 Quincy, if you have a project loaded, maybe you came offline or you just finished replay, you can go into Qimera directly. And it will prompt you if you want to bring in data for point cleaning or just sonar processing, in this case laser processing. So we'll say no thank you, just the point cleaning. So it brings in the dynamic surface that you created online. And a dynamic surface of laser data is pretty interesting because lasers do interesting things like scan up the sides of buildings. And when you make a grid of that, it looks a little silly. So the trick I do is I change the depth layer to shallow, and it shows the shoalest or the highest measurement in each one. And that looks a little more realistic. It's capturing the tops of these trees, it's capturing the edges of the building, and then the ground as well. So what I'll do is I'll just bring this back down to 2D mode. And if I'm happy with these, I can just do point editing. I can grab a slice and run slice editor. We've always been able to point edit laser data with Qimera coming from Quincy. For example, here I can kill some of these dots and take away the water surface. And again, I can use Control-R to hide the rejected ones. I can use Control-R to turn them back on and hit save. The dynamic surface will update. But in this case, what's the new capability this time around is the ability to treat it as a raw sensor data file. Oops, I need to get this here. I want that little slice. So I've got some building here and some trees and another building across the way. What I'm going to do is show off the new capability. So I can select these QPD files and right-click and load the associated DB file. And that turns them, it promotes them into DBs. So now I can do raw sensor processing in a way that I couldn't before. And what I want to do now, I had lost my slice. Let's get that going again. There's the slice editor. So there are the raw points in the slice editor below. What I'm going to do now is just bring in an SBET file. So under the source menu, I can add binary navigation files. So the laser systems are now brought in as DB. Go to the webinar directory, laser, Shanghai drone, and the SBET files there, .out. And all I need to do in this case, I'm bringing in SBET. I need to create a new positioning system so I can keep it separated from my online positioning system, my vessel editor. I'll leave all the latency and uncertainties and the location at the COG because that's what the SBET was processed at. And I want to bring in the position and the height for that. Let's just make this dialog a little bit bigger. So that's the system I've created. These are the signals I want to bring in from that data file. And I leave the defaults and I click OK. And that imports the SBET. And that's drawn in the scene. You see all the UAV mission where it ran up and down, north and south, and it did a big twisty turn at the end. I don't need to see the SBET other than the fact I see it landed in the project, it's in the right space. I see that these two files are marked as being out of date. I have the update icon here, and I'm being prompted to process them. So before I process them, what I'm going to do is grab an image snapshot of the slice editor, 0, before, SBET. That way I've got a before and after picture to see if the SBET actually did a better job. So my files need to be processed. I select them, I click the process icon, and that's going to reintegrate the navigation from the SBET, and it's going to update the surface. And once that's done, the slice editor will reload the soundings that are in that slice, and hopefully we'll see some improvements in positioning. We'll see better agreement between the different passes. There are two files there. And sure enough, they agree. It's kind of hard to capture that moment, though. So what I'll do is I'll save another image, 001 after SBET. Hit save. And I read the field report from Rob, the developer who went to work on this project, and he told me that the vessel offsets were incorrect. He found out after the fact. So what you can also do now with lasers and Qimera from Quincy is you can make corrections for lever arms, so you don't have to replay. So he told me that the forward offset had a sign error, and he also told me that the pitch offset was 0.2 and the roll offset was 0.25. So I'm editing the laser system in the vessel editor, the angular and linear offsets. I save the changes, and I get out of the vessel editor. The two files are marked as needing processing, and I'm prompted, would you like to reprocess? I say, yes, please do that. And that'll trigger the recalculation of all the footprints. And this does more math than just applying an SBET, so it takes a few tens of seconds more. So that's one file done, and the second one. And then finally, when that's done, the dynamic surface will update. And that triggers now. And what we'll see, hopefully, is a little bit better agreement. You see these balconies on the building. Hopefully, these will line up a little bit better after the application of the calibration. Sure enough, they do. And let's just grab a last image here, save to image under the context menu. 002 after calibration applied. There we go. And I can leave the slice editor, and if I hit Control F, you can open up your Qimera project in Windows Explorer, and I go to the export menu and I see those three images I created. Let's open them up. So this is the before the SBET, and I'll walk through. After the SBET, so things line up better. And then after the calibration, and things line up even better. So I've got good strong evidence that things are all okay. And that's just an example of the sorts of things you can do with laser. So this is on a UAV, and I think we have time for another quick one, which is laser from Quincy on a vessel. And I think this is data that Duncan might have collected himself. Is that true, Duncan? The Barnes Bridge data set?
No, this was Andrew Stanley and Chris Bulford from MMT UK who actually collected it.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this is looks like maybe 20 dB files from Quincy. So I'll just load them in Quincy. And again, from Quincy, if you've got dB and a dynamic surface in your QPD's computer online, you click on Qimera, and it immediately loads this project. Quick. I want to do just point cleaning. And so it scans through the QPDs, it extracts the track lines very quick, and there's the dynamic surface. So imagine getting offline from Quincy, and let's see, if I look at this first line, it was collected at 10:17 in the morning, and the last one was at 11:24. So an hour and 13 minutes of acquisition, And Quincy, all the calculations are done online, and all of that loaded into Qimera in, if I come down here, 2.83 seconds to scan the QPDs, and the dynamic surface was loaded in 0.67 seconds. So you're immediately to work. And what's our work in this case? We want to apply an SBET. And the whole point of this survey was to look at that bridge. And so if I do that trick again, I look at the shallow layer. That looks a whole lot more like a bridge to me than looking at the average of the top of a bridge and then the deck spans and then anything underneath. What I'm going to do is select the QPDs. I right-click, load associated DB file. That scans through and it extracts all the sensor information like the roll, the pitch, the position, the height. So while that's cooking up, I'm going to go and add an SBET file. I want to have an improved navigation on here. So I go to Laser, Barnes Bridge. Down here at the bottom is the SBET file. And I do the same thing I did in that last demo where I'm going to add a system. So again, this lets me keep track of the offsets and TPU settings for the SBET data I'm bringing in. And I want to bring the position, the height. I leave all the defaults and I click OK. And that scans through the SBET real quick. And you'll see that it draws the track line of the entire SBET. So that's good. It lands in the right location in the world. I'm happy with that. Did I get the right GPS week? Well, it lined up in time with all of these DB files. Otherwise, they wouldn't be marked as needing reprocessing. And so let's go ahead and reprocess them with the SBET. And what we'll see is hopefully that the improvement of definition on the bridge will be a little bit better. So that just takes a second. It's quickly re-navigating the QPD, and then it updates the dynamic surface. And there we go. So that looks a little better. I didn't get a before and after picture. Oopsie, where am I going? Here we go. So there's obviously a lot of cruft and noise in there that we really don't care about. All we really care about is the bridge. So what I'll do is I'll just draw a quick rectangle around it. And I'll load that in the 3D editor. It's warning me about a lot of points. I'm okay with that. And there are all the points from the 3D editor. And you can see there's a lot of noise. I can clean this up if I like. I'll get rid of some of this stuff that's floating up. Maybe there's a flock of seagulls or something flying overhead. Or some fog, I don't know what. I click the reject button. I can also use the D key to reject. And there's a bunch of junk inside underneath the bridge spans. Select them, delete. And I'll do the same thing here. I'm just being pretty sloppy here. I just want a quick and dirty point cloud. Let's type H to hide the widgets. Okay, I've just done a quick dirty cleaning. And now what I want to do is show off a new capability, is that I'm going to select all of these points from the bridge, and they light up. I'm not going to delete them or anything. What I'm going to do is under the File menu, there's a new option to save a snapshot. So what this does is it saves all of the points you just selected as a 3D point object in the scene. And I'm done in here. I'm going to hit, I don't really care about the cleaning I did because it'll trigger a dynamic surface update. Now if I go into 3D mode, what happens? That snapshot gets stored here under the SD objects node in the project layers directory. And if I just disable the view of the dynamic surface, I can see that I've got a point cloud. Let's just clean up my display a little bit. I don't need that selection. I don't need to see my raw sonar files. And let's tighten this up a little bit so that I can see more of the bridge. So I have all the point files that I selected in the 3D editor saved as just point objects in the scene. So if you needed to get these points out of here, you can select this snapshot object, and under the export menu, under point object, I can export it to a file, for example, the bridge.xyz. And what I'll do is copy this path here in a second. I'm going to use it. And I hit yes here. And what you can do is do something like go to Cloud Compare, or whatever engineering tool you're using to bring these points in. And I'll just open up that file here to show that off real quick. The bridge XYZ, and I just say yes to these things. And there, I've got the points quickly extracted from Qimera to go to whatever application you need to do your engineering work with, whether it's a QPS application or not. This is just an example of Cloud Compare doing that. You could also do this with Fledermaus. That's an SD file. This would open directly into Fledermaus. So I can export a Fledermaus scene from here. And I don't care about the track lines or the surface or the grids. I just want the SD objects. And I click OK. Again, if I go to Control F, that opens up my Qimera directory. I go to SD, and there's a scene. If I double click on this, it loads into Fledermaus. And I've got my point objects there. So if I wanted to do a movie or whatever kind of scene to craft there, that's a quick way to get your point cloud out of Qimera. Obviously, it's a little messy. I didn't do a very good job of cleaning it. But yeah, just to wind that up, we brought the DB files in. We applied an SBET in a few clicks. We selected the bridge. We went into the 3D editor, cleaned out a few bad points, selected the points we wanted to keep. We created a snapshot of that, and then we exported that to Cloud Compare, and then also saved it as a scene, so you can do that in Fledermaus as well. And that's pretty much it. That's what we wanted to show off today. So we have a few minutes for a couple of questions, Duncan, if there are any.
Yeah, one of the questions was, can you color the points by intensity, which I've answered that yes, you can. And then another question was, can the intensity be exported out with the snapshot?
The intensity, let's see here, color by intensity. The snapshot is a Fledermaus.sd file, so it has the 3D position, X, Y, and Z. It also has the intensity. So I've colored these points by intensity. It's a color scale. I could change it to grayscale if I want. I think the text file that we output just has, let's just check that. I'm pretty sure it's just the XYZ. But there's no reason we couldn't add the intensity to that. Yeah, the text file just has X, Y, and Z. From Qimera, that's what you can do. In Fledermaus, I think there are more export options for an SD file to capture more of the attributes on export. Does that answer the question, Duncan?
Yes. Yep.
Any other questions?
No other questions at the moment.
All right. Well, that's pretty much it. I think we'll wrap it up then. So thanks everybody for coming. We'll have this video posted online in the next few days, I imagine, and I'll make these probably. I think we can hang those handouts from the webinar on the YouTube page as well. If not, we can make those available to anybody that wants them. The slide deck I went through, for example. And I think that's it. So we'll wrap it up. So thanks everybody for joining us, and enjoy the weekend.